Welcome to HardScript.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. Friday night, 11 p.m. The apartment was quiet in that way that only happens when someone thinks they're alone. Claire was on a video call at the kitchen island, her laptop angled just enough that I could see the glow on the ceiling from the bedroom. I was supposed to be reading. Instead, I heard her best friend's voice cut through the air, sharp, confident, practiced. Monica was telling her to call it a break, to say she felt trapped, to watch me panic and scramble and reshape myself. And if I didn't, then I was weak, and the space would clear faster. Claire laughed. Not nervous, not uncertain, amused. I closed the book without a sound. When I stepped into the kitchen for water, Claire switched topics instantly, her smile professional, her posture relaxed. She introduced me on the screen like a footnote. Monica smiled back at me the way people do when they think they already won. I nodded once, filled my glass, and went back to the bedroom. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't ask questions. I opened my laptop. 2 years earlier, I'd set up a shared Google account for us. Family documents, insurance, backups. Convenience. Claire loved convenience. What she never cared to ask was who controlled the permissions. I signed in and went straight to her personal folder. I'd labeled it that myself to keep things organized. Inside was a spreadsheet called Career Planning 2025. The version history told the story before I even scrolled. Last edit. Yesterday, just before midnight. There was a column titled Post-Divorce Budget. A row underneath read Expected Settlement. 85,000. I stared at it for a long time, not angry, not surprised. Just alert. I specialized in digital security and data recovery. My job wasn't reacting to breaches. It was tracking them quietly until the pattern was undeniable. I checked the file permissions. Monica's email was there. Editor access. I checked the activity log. Multiple revisions over the past 3 months. Planning. Adjusting. Refining. This wasn't a moment. It was a project. I opened the drive's audit panel and watched the live sync tick forward as Claire saved another change from the kitchen. Somewhere behind that calm laugh was a timeline that didn't include me. I created a local encrypted backup and let it run in silence. Every file, every email, every calendar entry. When Claire came to bed an hour later, she kissed my shoulder and asked if I was awake. I told her I was tired. That part was true. I wasn't tired of her. I was tired of pretending I didn't see the system being built around me. By morning, the apartment felt different. Nothing had moved, but the structure underneath it had shifted. 6 years of marriage sat on top of systems I'd built without thinking twice. Shared accounts, shared storage, shared calendars. I was an IT security analyst by trade. I audited breaches for a living. The difference was that this one wasn't hostile. It was intimate. Claire woke up cheerful, already scrolling through her phone, mentally elsewhere. She talked about deadlines, about a campaign launch, about a lunch meeting she called networking like she always did. I nodded, poured coffee, listened. Stability was my role in her narrative. Reliable, predictable, easy to plan around. That afternoon, while she was at work, I went deeper. 3 months earlier, a document had appeared in her personal folder. Strategy. Docs. Created by Monica. Shared with Claire the same day. The content wasn't emotional. It was operational. Legal consultation dates. Asset breakdowns. A timeline that stretched 8 months into the future. The language was clean and confident, the kind people use when they believe the outcome is already decided. I checked the synchronized Gmail account next. Filters were in place. Keywords rerouted. Anything with the word divorce skipped the inbox entirely and went to archive. Thoughtful. Careful. Monica had done this before. There was an email thread that made my jaw tighten, not from shock, but from precision. Monica writing that James would move forward with funding once Claire was free. That he didn't mix personal complications with investments. Claire's response wasn't defensive. It was dismissive. She said I was too stable. That she needed someone who matched her ambition. I didn't feel insulted. I felt cataloged. The calendar filled in the rest. Every Wednesday for 3 months, the same entry. Coffee with James. Same cafe. Same time. Labeled networking lunch. Repetition is a signature. People who lie sporadically forget details. People who lie systematically build routines. I exported everything. Emails with full headers. Document histories with timestamps. Calendar logs. Location metadata where it existed. I generated a structured report and converted it to a single file. Evidence. PDF. Clean. Indexed. Boring to look at unless you understood what you were seeing. That night, Claire leaned into me on the couch, asked if I was quiet because I was tired. I said yes. Again, true enough. I wasn't angry. I was awake. And once you see a system clearly, you stop reacting to what it shows you and start deciding how it ends. I didn't change my behavior. That was the hardest part for them to anticipate. People expect confrontation or collapse. Silence feels like absence, but it's really preparation. Over the next 2 weeks, I kept monitoring the shared account the way I would any compromised system. Passively, methodically, Claire added a new document labeled Vision Next Phase. Monica edited it late at night. The tone was confident, almost celebratory. There were notes about personal branding, positioning herself as newly independent, and a rough budget that assumed my income would continue covering the mortgage while she reset. Another email appeared, routed through the same filter. Monica recommending a divorce attorney who specialized in tech marriages. The message mentioned leverage, complexity, and getting more than half. Claire replied with a thumbs-up emoji. No questions. No hesitation. I checked the metadata on that reply. Sent from our couch. James started appearing more clearly in the picture. Not just calendar entries, but shared documents. A pitch outline Claire had drafted for a project she claimed was still conceptual. Notes from James embedded as comments. Suggestions about timing, about optics, about how much easier things would be once she wasn't married to someone comfortable. Comfortable. That was the word they used when they thought I wasn't listening. I finished my backup and stored it offline, then created a mirror copy in a secure cloud vault only I controlled. Redundancy matters when stakes rise. I added hashes to every file so nothing could be disputed later. If anything changed, I'd know. At home, Claire started acting lighter, brighter, like someone who'd already stepped out emotionally and was enjoying the last stretch of pretending. She talked about needing space more often, about feeling stuck, about how sometimes people needed distance to appreciate what they had. I listened. I didn't reassure her. I didn't push back. I let her fill the silence with her own narrative. One night, I watched her add a line to the spreadsheet. Expected settlement remained unchanged. But underneath it, a note appeared. Temporary housing covered by Ethan until transition complete. That was the moment something settled for me. This wasn't confusion. It wasn't influence. It was entitlement backed by planning. I didn't feel betrayed the way people imagine betrayal feels. There was no spike, no burn, just clarity. The same clarity that comes when you finally isolate the source of a system failure. You stop asking why it happened and start deciding what you're going to let fail. She chose Sunday evening for the announcement. Timing mattered to her. The apartment was clean, lights warm, her phone face down on the table like a prop she wouldn't need anymore. She sat across from me on the couch, folded her hands, took a breath she'd probably practiced in the mirror. She said she needed a break. Not a divorce. Just space. Time to think. She said she felt like she was suffocating. I watched her carefully, not for emotion, but for expectation. There was a pause built into her words, a space where panic was supposed to rush in. Questions. Promises. Negotiation. Proof that I was still anchored to the version of us she'd already moved past. I nodded once and said it was fine. The relief on her face was instant and badly concealed. Confusion followed it, then calculation. She waited for more. There was nothing. I stood up and walked to the bedroom. I'd packed the bag the night before. Minimal. Clothes, laptop, charger, documents. Everything else was already duplicated elsewhere. Claire followed me, her voice lighter now, trying to sound reasonable. She asked if I was really leaving. She said this wasn't what she meant by space. I told her she asked for room to breathe. I was giving it to her. 15 minutes later, I walked out with my keys. No argument. No conditions. No timeline. The door closed quietly behind me. I checked into a short-term rental across town. Neutral furniture. Good internet. No memories. I didn't text. I didn't call. Silence wasn't a tactic. It was alignment. On the second day, the shared calendar updated. A new entry appeared without any attempt at subtlety. Dinner with James. 8 p.m. Upscale place downtown. The description included a note about discussing opportunity. I took a screenshot and archived it. On the third day, Claire's messages started coming in. Not desperate. Curious. She asked if I was okay, if I wanted to talk, if I missed her. I read them. I didn't respond. By the fifth day, the tone changed. Confusion edged toward irritation. This wasn't how the experiment was supposed to go. The break was meant to destabilize me, not remove me from the equation entirely. I waited. When people design a test, they rarely prepare for the outcome where the subject simply walks away and lets the data speak for itself. On the fifth day of silence, I sent my first message. 12 words. Neutral. Practical. I said we needed to discuss house utilities and suggested meeting the next afternoon at a cafe downtown. A public place. No intimacy. No leverage. She replied within minutes. Agreed. Added a smiley face that felt out of place. I arrived early and chose a table with a clear line of sight to the door. Habit. Claire walked in looking composed, almost relieved. This was the moment she expected the conversation to pivot back toward emotion, toward repair, toward control. She started to talk about us, about how breaks were complicated, about needing reassurance. I didn't interrupt. I let her finish. Then I turned my tablet toward her. The first screen was the document Monica had created. Strategy. Docs. The title alone drained the color from Claire's face. I didn't narrate. I didn't accuse. I scrolled. Legal timelines. Asset notes. The line about expected settlement. Then the email thread recommending the attorney who specialized in tech marriages. Then the calendar entries. Wednesday lunches, perfectly spaced. 12 of them. Same name. Same place. Her hands moved to her face before she realized what she was doing. She asked if I'd been spying on her. Her voice was thin, defensive, already searching for a way to frame this as a violation instead of a discovery. I told her the account was shared, that I'd set it up, that I was the administrator, that everything she'd saved, edited, or scheduled lived inside a system I monitored by default. I told her I'd been watching for 3 months. That was the moment the script broke. She whispered the number again, like it might change if she repeated it. 3 months. She hadn't planned for that kind of visibility. Monica hadn't warned her about that level of exposure. She tried to explain, said it was planning, not action, that she was confused, that Monica had pushed her, that nothing had really happened yet. I told her planning was action when resources, people, and timelines were already in place. I placed a flash drive on the table between us. I said everything she'd seen was already archived, timestamped, indexed, shared with my attorney. She reached for her phone and called Monica. Her voice cracked. Accusations spilled out. Promises demanded. On speaker, Monica sounded calm. She said Ethan was bluffing. That men like me always did. I leaned forward just enough to be heard and said I didn't bluff. I documented. Then I stood up, left the tablet where it was, and walked out. Some experiments fail the moment the subject stops playing along. After the cafe, I went back to silence. Not the kind that waits for a reply, but the kind that closes a channel entirely. Claire sent messages that evening, long ones, fragmented, swinging between apology and fear. I didn't answer. By the time people start explaining, the decisions are already behind them. The fallout didn't take long. By the next morning, the shared drive showed frantic activity. Files opened, closed, renamed. Monica accessed the folder twice, then disappeared from the permissions list entirely. Someone was trying to clean footprints without understanding how logs work. That only made the trail clearer. An hour later, Claire emailed instead of texting. A different tone. She said she was scared, that she hadn't realized how serious this could become, that Monica had told her planning wasn't the same as doing. I forwarded the message to my attorney and archived it. By the third day, James vanished from her calendar. Every Wednesday lunch disappeared in a single batch update. No explanation. No reschedule. Just gone. People like him don't like complications, and they like documentation even less. Whatever story Claire tried to give him collapsed under the weight of timestamps and context. Investors are allergic to drama they didn't cause. Through a mutual acquaintance, I learned that Claire and Monica had stopped speaking. The friendship didn't fracture loudly. It failed quietly, the way alliances do when one side realizes the other sold confidence without offering protection. Claire blamed Monica for overconfidence. Monica blamed Claire for panic. Neither accepted responsibility. Monica's reputation took its first hit that same week. A former client pulled out of a coaching package. Another asked for a refund. Word travels in small professional circles, especially when someone starts framing your advice as reckless. Coaches trade on perceived control. Once that cracks, everything does. Claire tried again. This time she asked to talk face-to-face. Said she just wanted clarity. Closure. I replied once, 24 hours later, and told her any communication should go through legal counsel. Nothing else. That message ended the conversation. I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel triumphant. What I felt was distance. Emotional and logistical. The system had isolated itself the moment I stopped feeding it attention. At night, alone in the rental, I reviewed the evidence once more. Not because I needed reassurance, but because clarity matters when you're about to close something permanently. I saw no hesitation in her words. No doubt in her planning. No concern for impact. She hadn't wanted to see me fall apart. She'd wanted to see how cleanly she could step over me. What she didn't account for was what happens when the person being tested refuses to perform and instead lets the structure collapse under its own assumptions. A month passed before she showed up in person. I was leaving the office later than usual when I saw her across the parking lot. Claire looked smaller somehow, like someone who'd been living without structure for too long. No makeup, hair pulled back without care. She said my name like it was a question she'd been rehearsing for weeks. I didn't change my pace. I stopped because avoiding her would have implied unfinished business. She asked for 10 minutes. Said she just wanted to explain. I agreed, but I didn't step closer. She told her story quickly, like she was afraid the window would close. Monica had pushed too hard. James had disappeared the moment things got complicated. The startup was under pressure, and without investment, her position was unstable. She said she'd been scared, that she'd confused ambition with escape. She said she loved me. I waited until she ran out of words. Then I told her the truth in the calmest way I could. I said love doesn't draft exit strategies in shared folders. It doesn't calculate settlements while pretending everything is fine. It doesn't schedule weekly lunches with another man and call it networking. I told her Monica hadn't written her diary entries. Monica hadn't added the line about expected settlement. Monica hadn't tested me with a break to see if I'd fall apart. That had been her. She cried then. Not dramatically. Quietly. The kind of crying that comes when there's nothing left to negotiate. She said she'd made a mistake. That people deserve second chances. I told her mistakes happen in moments. What she'd done had taken months. I turned and walked back to my car. I didn't look back to see if she was still standing there. The divorce moved faster than she expected. Evidence has weight when it's organized. Her attorney tried to frame the planning as hypothetical. The judge didn't agree. Intent shows itself in patterns, not declarations. The settlement was clean. Equal division. No additional compensation. No damages. Her own documents made that impossible. After it was finalized, she sent one last message. She said I'd destroyed everything she was building. I read it once and deleted it. Systems don't collapse because someone attacks them. They collapse because the assumptions they're built on stop holding. She assumed I'd beg, that I'd chase, that I'd prove my worth under pressure. I'd done something simpler. I stepped out of the test entirely and let the record speak. The weeks after the divorce were quieter than I expected. Not empty, just stripped of noise that had been masquerading as connection. Claire unraveled slowly. Not in public. Not dramatically. It showed up in the places people don't curate. Missed deadlines. A sudden resignation from the startup she'd tied her future to. Without James's funding, the project stalled, then quietly dissolved. Ambition needs momentum. Once it breaks, it rarely restarts in the same direction. Monica tried to outrun the damage. She rebranded within a month. New website. New language. Less talk about power moves, more about aligned decisions. But reputations in small professional circles don't reset on command. Former clients talk. Especially the ones who feel like advice pushed them toward chaos instead of clarity. One by one, contracts ended. No public accusations. Just absence. James resurfaced on LinkedIn a few months later. New profile photo. New relationship status. Engagement announcement tucked neatly between funding updates. People like him don't linger near anything that leaves a paper trail. I moved out of the rental and into a smaller place near a park. Clean lines. Minimal furniture. The kind of space where nothing echoes back at you. Work noticed the shift before I said anything. Focus sharpens when you're not bleeding attention into a failing system. I was promoted that quarter. Senior security architect. My salary jumped by $52,000 a year. No celebration, just acknowledgement. Claire reached out once more after that. A single message asking if I ever thought about us. I read it and archived it. Some conversations don't deserve a response because they already had one, delivered months earlier in silence. I started seeing someone new. Lily, data analyst. We met at a conference, exchanged cards, talked shop before anything else. On our second date, she asked if I still believed in long-term relationships after divorce. I told her the truth. I believed in stability that didn't require testing. In people who didn't confuse leverage with love. She understood without asking me to explain. Looking back, the break Claire staged was meant to measure my desperation. Monica believed pressure revealed value. James believed availability increased worth. They were all wrong. Pressure reveals structure. And when the structure is flawed, the quiet thing to do isn't to fight it. It's to step back and let it show exactly what it was built on. The legal part ended cleanly, but the consequences kept moving long after the paperwork stopped. That's how real collapses work. They don't explode. They recede. Claire struggled more than she admitted. Without the startup, without the investor she'd been positioning herself for, her resume looked impressive but unfinished. Short stints. Big titles. No exits. Recruiters asked questions she couldn't answer without revisiting the same story she was trying to outrun. Ambition without stability scares people who write checks. Monica attempted damage control with discipline and volume. More posts. More webinars. More language about empowerment and strategic transitions. But credibility isn't built by repetition. It's built by outcomes. Too many of her former clients had similar endings. Quiet separations. Sudden financial stress. Relationships collapsing under advice framed as growth. No one accused her publicly. They just stopped calling. James moved on the way people like him always do. Efficiently. I saw his update months later through a mutual connection. New firm. New partner. Married. The past erased with a clean timeline. He didn't look back because he never believed he'd been involved in anything at all. To him, Claire was a variable that didn't perform as expected. Claire tried once more to rewrite the ending. Not to me directly. To our shared circle. She framed the divorce as mutual. As necessary. As growth. People nodded politely. Then they watched what followed. Stories don't survive long without supporting evidence. I didn't participate in any of it. I changed apartments again, this time into a place that felt permanent. Morning light. Quiet streets. No shared storage. No shared systems. Everything compartmentalized by design. Trust doesn't mean removing boundaries. It means respecting them. Lily noticed the difference before I said anything. She said I seemed calm in a way that didn't require reassurance. To Monica's voice coaching Claire on how to destabilize me. To the laugh that followed. They believed power came from pressure. From forcing a reaction. From watching someone bend. What they never considered was what happens when the person being tested doesn't resist, doesn't comply, and doesn't perform. They step aside. And once you do that, the structure people built around you has nothing left to lean on. The last confirmation came quietly, the way everything else had. An email from my attorney stating the case was fully closed. No pending matters. No follow-ups. No loose ends. Just a line that said I was free to move on. I closed the laptop and didn't feel the urge to mark the moment. No celebration. No relief flood. Closure isn't loud when you've already done the emotional work months earlier. Claire never reached out again. I heard through someone else that she'd moved apartments twice in 1 year. Downsized. Changed industries. The ambition was still there, but it had lost its edge. Plans need confidence to survive. Once confidence fractures, everything becomes provisional. Monica faded further from relevance. Her new brand stayed active, but the audience was thinner. Coaching thrives on belief. Once people start questioning outcomes instead of slogans, the entire structure weakens. She didn't disappear. She just stopped matching. James remained a ghost in the story. A passing figure who never stayed long enough to be accountable. I understood that type better than most. People who operate that way don't see themselves as participants, only as opportunities moving through systems they never intend to maintain. My life simplified. Workdays became cleaner. Focused. I stopped carrying redundancy for other people's instability. I built systems that assumed responsibility instead of sacrifice. The promotion settled in. The extra $52,000 a year changed numbers, not priorities. Lily and I took things slowly. No tests, no games. When disagreements came up, they were addressed directly, not stored for leverage. Trust didn't feel like risk. It felt like alignment. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about that moment in the kitchen, about the plan to call it a break and watch me fall apart, about the assumption that silence meant weakness, that stability meant passivity, that love could be measured by panic. They wanted proof of attachment. What they got was confirmation of independence. I didn't win by exposing them publicly. I didn't win by taking more than my share. I didn't win by revenge or humiliation. I won by stepping out of the test and letting their own words, documents, and timelines speak without interference. Some people fight loudly when they're betrayed. Others build records, close accounts, and leave cleanly. I chose the second. And once I walked away, there was nothing left for them to test. Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories.